Good morning. Welcome to the podcast today. My name is Dustin, and I have an amazing guest here for us today. I have the plet master himself, Mr. Dave Danna. Let's go ahead and bring him over so you can find out, just like me, how awesome he is. Let's go ahead and do that. Welcome, Mr. Danna. How are you, sir?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm doing well this morning.
Oh, it's wonderful to hear. So I'm excited to have you here because you are, for all intents and purposes, outside of uh, our normal community. So that's one thing that it's one of the big goals that I have is to start bringing in people outside the community that aren't so much a strict keto, but are doing things to change their life, doing things to to move themselves forward, get healthy, however that may be. So, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and kind of give us a sort of a brief backstory and kind of how you got started and how we got to where we
Absolutely.
are right now.
Absolutely. So in the summer of 2022, nearly 2 years ago, feels crazy. It has been that long. I had just moved into a new house, the house I'm in right now, actually. And I noticed a few things. This was like May or June of 2022. A few things happened basically all at once that were sort of a wake up call to me that I might have a problem going on, that I might need to make a few changes. And the first one of those was that this house has a set of stairs, and I was getting winded going up the stairs, just a single flight of stairs at 30 years old. And then I flew, and this was the first flight, or maybe the second flight, but I think the first flight I'd taken, since the pandemic. So don't think I'd flown since 2019, and I needed to ask the stewardess for a seatbelt extender, which was basically the most embarrassing public thing I had had to do up until that point, and came as a bit of a shock again because I hadn't flown for a year or two, and the last time I'd flown, I'd been a bigger guy, but certainly not seatbelt extender big. And the last thing was I got back from that trip and I thought, hey, like this issue with the stairs, I sort of wrote off in my mind, but now also with this seatbelt extender, maybe I should weigh myself. And I know I have a scale somewhere, one of these Amazon, boxes I had moved from the old house to the new house. So I grabbed it out and I jumped on it and I got an error message on it. And I thought, I've just moved. It got broken in the move. It was pretty cheap when I bought it. So I'll just buy another one. So I bought the exact same thing, showed up the next day, and I got on it again and got the same error message. And so I was like, well, I don't know what to do now. Do I buy a third scale? That's kind of weird. And I was going to sleep that night, and I realized maybe the scale isn't the problem because the likelihood that I got two that are broken back to back is incredibly low. Maybe I'm the problem. And something I never considered before was that maybe the scale has a maximum weight, and maybe I'm over the maximum weight. And so I checked the next morning. The maximum weight was 400 pounds. I was getting an error message on both because I was over 400 pounds, and they were both accurate. And so all those combined, happening basically in the same month, to mean that I needed to do some rapid changes along with my not just physical health, but mental health, not just my diet, but also my exercise. And I began basically the next day, not ever having been in a gym before, having done diets before. Of course, every big guy I think has tried a number of different diets, and obviously they had all failed. But I tried to do something that was very different, just because didn't have a lot of options. I felt at that point in time I needed to do something drastic, and I needed to do something quickly. And now it's been 19 or 20 months, and I'm not getting an error message on the scale anymore. Luckily, I've settled sort of on a low carb diet with basically daily exercise, and I'm down about 140 pounds in the last 20 months, and got about, thank you, got about 60, 70, 80 pounds to go. Depends exactly where I want to end up. But right now, the goal is to get under 200, which would be losing at least half of my starting weight. Again, I'm not really sure what it was, but after a month, I should say, after a month of working on my diet. And initially, working on my diet meant no fast food, no junk food, not drinking my calories, and no alcohol. Basically, that first month was just, I was still eating carbs, and I was still eating some things that now I would consider not so healthy, but I didn't want any food that was coming in through the window of some fast food place. I didn't want to be eating alone in my car. I didn't want to be drinking my calories. And I didn't really have like a huge issue with alcohol, but I would drink on the weekends, and then that would give me the mental permission to eat more on the weekends. So that's what I cut out initially. So after a month of that and joining a gym for the first time, just doing some basic cardio because I was pretty big to do anything else, I did see 399.9 on the scale at the end of June. So when I post or I talk about, I'm down 142 pounds, I'm going from that 399, and 20 months later, here we are.
It's amazing. Yeah, I mean
Quite in 2 years
that
or a year and a half, where it has been. Yeah.
to touch on the seatbelt thing. So I never had to ask for a seatbelt extender. I thankfully, but I mean, I was in the situation where I was and like stretching and just like making it
Exactly.
fit.
Yes,
You know what
yes.
I mean? I was just like, I think that would have like killed me.
Yeah,
And it's like the idea of it is one of the most like embarrassing, like excruciating, like, you know, because I
yes.
don't fly all that often anyway, usually
Yeah,
maybe
mhm.
once every 2 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But like that was always the most stressful thing because because if you know who Kevin Smith is,
Mhm, yes.
some years ago he had a situation where he was on a flight and Southwest kicked him off the flight because he
Oh,
was
I
too
remember
big.
this story. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of those things that like that was in my mind where I'm like, okay, I don't want to get kicked off of a flight because that's embarrassing.
For
How do you
sure.
afford to pay for 2 tickets if you that
Exactly.
this
Yep.
happens to you?
Yep.
Oh, and just that and I think that's one thing that I don't think people who get to a certain size because I was well over 400 pounds. I didn't have the issue where we didn't have a home scale, I don't think,
Yeah.
but I had gone to the doctor to get some work started. I had a hernia and I was going to work on getting a sleep apnea machine, and they had me step on the scale and I was 421 pounds.
Yeah.
Hit you in the head like a sledgehammer,
It does,
like
yeah.
so yeah, like I think Darth Carnivore down here was talking about this. He says it's like I still think I have my seatbelt extender I bought from Amazon a few years ago. Bought it because I wanted to avoid having to ask for one while being seated. I never thought of that. Now,
Yeah,
granted,
neither did
I
I, but I would at the
I
time,
would
yeah.
have ordered I would have ordered one. Now, even still, like even I've lost over 100 pounds. And there was a time where I would get on the plane and I would
Wow,
be able to
congrats,
buckle it.
yeah.
And then, like the last time we flew, even being under 100, lost over 100 pounds, I was like struggling to buckle it again. I'm like, are they making planes smaller?
That is the other thing. Those seats I think are probably always gonna be tight, you know what I mean? They're never
Yeah.
they're never comfortable, but at least it buckles now. And
Yeah.
so because the other thing was I didn't realize I needed one, so I guess what people do, because 'cause I've now watched people do it, is they ask as they go into the plane if they don't have their own, and they just get handed it from the stewardess who stands right at the front, and they don't wait until everyone is seated and then can't get it buckled, and so when they come around to check your seatbelt you then have to ask, and they walk up in front of everyone and get it and bring it back. But I mean, I wasn't expecting it,
Yeah.
right? I was expecting, like you, like it's going to be an uncomfortable seat, I'm a bigger guy, but it's going to buckle, and I'll and like that's just how flying is, at whatever weight I was at that point in time. But but yeah, I mean, that was a real wake up call to me. Along with getting that error on the scale, I for a long time, because I had gone hybrid or remote during the pandemic, I hadn't been doing as much traveling, I hadn't been seeing as many people. It made it easier to lie to myself or to tell myself I would fix it later, or to sort bottle everything up and not take care of what had become what had been gone from just a big guy who needs to lose some weight, which down I mean I'm in the deep south, into chairs, or weigh himself on a normal scale, or has difficulty tying his shoes, to the point where at 30 years old I was sort of concerned about getting to 40 or getting to 50, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. So like the pandemic kind of caught me. I had lost most of my weight pre-pandemic starting in
Mm,
2016. So
yeah,
coming into the pandemic and then being housebound, like my job went remote and just like everybody else basically. And like you just kind of like it starts to creep back in again a little bit. And you're like, stop like shirts start getting tight again. You're like, what's happening? I'm not eating any different. And I guess we
exactly.
were like doing a little
Yes.
more ordering in and things like, a little more like you start to cope with that
Yes.
with food because you don't have people. There was a lot of things going on. Like my grandmother at the time had some health issues and was in a nursing home for some recovery, but we couldn't visit her. That
Yeah,
all
yeah.
these things kind of creep in, and you're like, just like, okay, well, we're gonna order this food now. We're gonna do this now, and I mean, and then this channel kind of was born out of that as well. So,
Yeah. And there was
um,
so much there was for me, I didn't realize how just going, day by day to an office was probably getting me a baseline of a few thousand steps a day, like a little bit of exercise, right? And all of a sudden that just stopped, you know? So I had never gone to a gym prior to 2022. I'd never done any formal exercising, but just getting ready, going to an office and then coming home and then having a routine gave me a baseline of steps walked and calories burned, and I never adjusted my eating. In fact, I increased my eating while decreasing what little tiny sliver of exercise I was getting, and then compound that over 2 or 3 years. And that problem snuck up on me as well.
I had a time in about 2010 where I was going to the gym Monday through Friday every single morning, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays going after work as well. The gym had a sauna and a pool and all that stuff, so I would kind of go at the end of the night and do some cardio after work, and then sit in the sauna for a while. My
Yeah,
current gym has the sauna and all that stuff, but I've been very absent, if you will.
yeah, yeah,
So I need to get back in that routine. But at the time, I didn't have any understanding of what a good diet should be, or
yes.
what healthy food was. I was going after the gym and going to Subway and grabbing,
Hmm.
like a foot long sub and getting,
Yeah,
and even I was getting the chicken breast, and all that stuff, but I was getting,
hmm,
eating a whole loaf of bread.
exactly. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was getting like a flatbread for breakfast. So I was getting two things, and yeah. So like,
I
and I
Yeah.
was going that crazy, and I only saw like in about 3 to 6 months about 30 pounds lost, which in my brain was like, well, that's not enough. That's not worth it. So obviously, what did I do? Stop going. Then that
Exactly.
gym stopped being there anyway. So
Yeah, it's
yeah.
crazy. I thought looking back now, a lot of the healthy options I would get at restaurants or at fast food places or frozen meals, sure, I guess they might have been slightly healthier than the non-healthy options, but they were still double the calories that I'd probably want per meal with added sugar. And it was just like no wonder all those earlier diets I struggled so much on, because I was going with sort of what the company says is healthy or what mainstream says is healthy. And for me, yeah, it would work. I would walk a ton and I would eat like a lot of salads, but there would be a salad from a fast food place or a salad from a restaurant or a prepackaged salad from, a store. And so one of the things I've tried to do now is learn to cook a little bit more, so I'm learning about what the ingredients are actually going into my food, and learn really what portion sizes are, because they'll sell you something that looks to me like it's an individual portion, and then on the back it will say 3 servings. But the way they've sold it and the way they've marketed it in the section of the grocery store I got it in was in like the lunch section, so I ate it for lunch, right? And so I know people may know me from posting gym selfies early on, but really like the mental health aspect and the diet has been far more important than the exercise. The exercise is more for my routine and for my mental health than it is for the actual calories I burn going into the gym. Those are fairly minimal. What it really is for is that I feel good getting up and doing it early and having it accomplished by 6 a.m. or 6:30. That makes me that transforms my whole day, especially because I do it on Monday through Friday. So those are work days for me. So I'm, more likely to have a bad day or more likely to have a stressful day. And so kicking it off with the gym in the morning, I don't even necessarily track exactly how many calories I think I'm burning at the gym because it's not a lot. You know what I
Right. And I
mean?
think And I think the major misconception is at the gym, like whether it's cardio or you're lifting weights, it's not necessarily about the calories because I don't necessarily like pay attention to calories much. I pay attention to satiety
Yep,
because if I'm
exactly. Same
focused
here.
solely on calories for myself, that becomes that becomes an unsustainable way of looking at things for me personally. So I
Yeah.
look at how am I going to be sustained? How can I be find satiety in the food that I'm eating?
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
yeah,
For me, I almost feel like what I had done in the past was more micro focused on all these little tiny details. Well, this snack has 70 calories, so I can eat it. Yeah, but it's not going to make you feel full, and it's full of chemicals and additives and sugar, and it's in this little individually packaged, box. So what's really going to happen is you're going to eat one, and then you're going to give yourself permission to eat another one and another one, right? Whereas if I focus on more whole foods now without so much sugar, without so much processing, without so many weird ingredients, and I focus on eating them, for me, I usually eat about twice a day until I'm full. I do think almost every day I'm in a calorie deficit, and I have cut back way back on my sugar, which means I have cut back way back on my carbs. And there are days where I'll put it in Fitbit just to see, just to make sure that is true. But as long as the scale keeps generally going in the right direction, as long as I feel good, and as long as I'm generally full eating what I'm eating every day, I don't feel like I'm starving every day. That's a huge plus from the all the prior attempts I tried this.
yeah. So I mean, that's one of the things. Like I would find that in the time I was going to the gym in 2010, I would eat my breakfast. I would go from the gym across the street to Subway, get the breakfast flatbread with egg white, some cheese, and I would eat that. And then before I even because I started work at 9, I'd get to the gym at 6, get to work at 9. I would eat my breakfast on the way to work. And then by the time I'm sitting down at like 9, 10 o'clock rolls around, I'm eating that lunch sandwich because I am starving to death.
Exactly. Yep.
So that's like
Exactly.
so being able to find satiety is one of the biggest things because I am I'm a food addict 100%. Like
Yeah.
I can't moderate. So that's when when you hear this thing like everything in moderation, but that doesn't work for me
Yeah.
because moderation is if it's in front of me, I'm going to eat all of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I'm
I
very
have to
jealous
yeah.
of those people who can do everything in moderation. I wish it worked for me, and I do see it working for others, and there's some jealousy there. I'm not going to lie, but for me, everything in moderation would involve like a large quantities of fast food and junk food and quite a lot of beer on the weekends, and you know cutting those in half while it's like it works on the math works, the calories would be much better if I could cut them in half or cut them in a quarter. For me, it was easier to just cut out fast food, right? And additionally, rather than try to do it in moderation, even in moderation, I don't think it's particularly healthy, right? I don't particularly trust what's in that food. I don't really know what they're doing. I'm not sure I can do the moderation. I probably can't. And I don't really need it in my life. The prices have all doubled and tripled. If I can get to a place where I can meal prep, which I'm not perfect at. I was at Wendy's 3 weeks ago and I just got, the a la carte burger patties with the toppings without the bun, and it was fine, right? Like, again, I'm not super happy that I had to do that, but it happens to everyone. It's not, I'm not perfect, but, as much meal prep as I can do, that's replacing fast food and junk food, both saves me money and just cuts out food categories that I don't need and I think are very hard for me to moderate because I find fast food very addictive. Billions of dollars have been spent to make it taste good. I don't know why people pretend that it doesn't taste good. It tastes great, and then 30 minutes later, you want to eat again because it just goes right through you, and then and then I've eaten far too much. So it's difficult for me to moderate something like that. Like you were saying, it's very convenient because I can get it anywhere, and it was easier for me instead of calorie counting every single thing and trying to do moderation to just cut things out. And the same goes for alcohol. Largely, it's just liquid calories plus. Lowered my inhibition and led to more eating. It wasn't even so much I ever woke up drunk or hungover or found myself in a really bad way. It was just after 3 beers, that's like the mental way where I'm like, all right, right now I'm just starting to feel it, and that means I'm going to give myself permission to eat more.
Right, right. Like even I found myself like on New Year's Eve, I gave myself permission because I go to my, I have a buddy, we spend every New Year's at his house,
Yeah.
and I had, more whiskey than I should have had. And I paid
Yep.
the price the next day. And I went and I stopped at White Castle because I'm like, okay, it's New Year's Day, and I was starting carnivore on the second. Or no, I was doing a 7-day fast starting on the second. So I was like, okay, so I gave myself permission, but there's that lowered inhibition where I was hungover, and I'm like, White Castle cheeseburgers sound excellent right now. And it would not be something that I would normally do. So there's that lowered
Yeah.
inhibition. And
Hmm.
I don't drink on a normal basis. Typically, if I'm drinking, I'm sitting on a beach somewhere. And I
Yeah.
live in Indiana,
Yeah.
so that doesn't happen very often,
Yeah.
you know? So I wanted to touch real quick here. Matt Franklin is a good friend. He says that he follows you on Twitter and you're a true inspiration. I
I
can't
appreciate
agree
that.
more. That's how I found you, was Twitter. Um,
It's
and
wild to me. It's wild to me. Thank you for starters. Thank you so much.
Sure.
It continues to be just amazing and humbling and wild to me that people follow me anywhere, but also like that they people say that they are motivated by me or find me as an inspiration, right? Because I live in South Carolina. I'm an accountant, right? I'm just losing weight slowly, right? And posting selfies at Planet Fitness and what groceries I'm buying at Super Walmart, and so it's crazy. Not never something I expected. I didn't have any social media public accounts before I started posting about this journey. And I, honestly, I'm not even a huge fan of social media, but here we are, and I'm gonna keep documenting my journey, and just I appreciate that so much. It's completely mind blowing, and at this point, it really motivates me. I initially started posting actually on Instagram to hold myself accountable. So I'd have progress pictures, so I'd have weigh in pictures, so I'd have food pictures. And so if I looked back after a month, after 3 months, after 6 months, I could hold myself accountable and I couldn't lie to myself because I could go see, what was I eating 6 months ago? What did the scale say 6 months ago? Was I working out 6 months ago? And I would just have it documented with dates on Instagram. And then I started saying, well, I'll post these on Twitter as well. At the time, there was all that drama about Elon buying Twitter, so that was sort of the era of when I was kicking this off. But the accountability I never thought would be through followers because I never thought I'd have any. Right? I just thought I would have this scroll of pictures I could go through and just see what happens. And then people started following me, and now the followers and the community has become a form of accountability. And so I get, people tell me that I motivate them and I inspire them, and that's wild to me, but also it's motivating to me, and it's now an accountability metric. People sometimes ask or wonder, like, how can they get started, how can other people get started? And as weird as it is, because social media can be so toxic, especially X or Twitter, whatever we call it these days, but for me, it's been such a positive, both learning place, because I really didn't know anything about exercising, didn't know anything about keto, didn't know anything about low carb, but also it is one of the stronger accountability mechanisms for for me at this point in time. I think no man is an island, and a lot of the prior times I tried this diet and exercise, um, I was trying to do it as an island, right? Bottle it all up, push it all down, do something drastic. I can do it all by myself. Never worked, right? And this method, where I'm posting a lot of stuff I feel pretty uncomfortable putting on the internet, right, and sharing with a lot of people, is working. And so I just, I haven't quite figured out what that is or why that is, but thank you. And it's wild to be here, and it's wild to have people say that. But I appreciate it, and it's not a one way street. I definitely get motivated and held accountable by the community as well.
100%. So that's how I feel. Like when I started my Instagram years and years ago, I didn't have any real thing to be like an influencer or anything like that. Or even before I started this YouTube channel, even like the idea to start the channel was, how can I share my story because of how, looking back, how hopeless I felt, how like basically resigned in my fate to be, my mom had passed away in 2013, and she'd had strokes and heart attacks and had been in nursing homes. And I basically, after she passed away, I was resigned that that was going to be my fate, and that's just, well, that's what's going to be me. I'm going to get to into my 50s, maybe make it to 60, and I'm just going to just follow suit. I'm going to have heart attacks and strokes, and I was like, okay, I found this way to kind of dig myself out of that depression, that hopelessness, that helplessness, and find a path that was sustainable and has given me more tools than I ever thought imaginable. How can I share that with people? And so I know that there's the stigma around social media. I love utilizing Twitter or X and Instagram and, Facebook and all these. I think they are tools first and foremost to get your message across, to get uh, your message out there, because I see your Twitter and I see you posting some of the most inspirational, realistic things because you are showing your cart. You're showing that you're shopping at Walmart. You've got the yellow labels. And I'm
Hmm.
like, there's like, and I know there's so many influencers out there saying you shouldn't eat that way. You need to go and buy this $15 a pound hamburger. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yep.
wait, time out. How can we be sustainable here? How can we be realistic and get 99% of the way to where we need to be? Because I think there is something in, buying the local processed meat that would be better for us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Yes.
I can't afford that.
Yeah.
That's not sustainable for me. I can buy some every once in a while, but I'm just like you. I'm buying sales from Walmart. I'm buying sales from Kroger, whatever stores we have. I'm going to Costco. I'm looking at Flip and seeing who's got what on sale. That's how we have to survive.
Yeah.
And so that realism there is part of, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because like I see, you putting yourself out there, you're taking your photos, you're at Plet,
Yep. Yep.
and and you're showing your Walmart carts. You're, rate my cart, and I love that. And then one of the things that I think that made me giddy like a little schoolgirl is when you got retweeted and like videos coming out from Arnold Schwarzenegger. That was ridiculous. And I mean, this is from an outside perspective. I couldn't imagine what
Yeah,
you
it was
felt.
wild. Yeah.
So, um, like that's just, I love the fact that we can take something that people assume or take for granted as a very toxic thing like social media and flip it on its head and utilize it for something that is going to help others, whether we see it or not. Because I've had people come up to me that I had no idea were following me. I know, people in my personal life that are like, I've been watching, I haven't commented, but I've been doing this and I've lost X amount of weight. You've really helped me change everything about myself. And I'm like, that's just it, I mean, it rocks you to your core. And it's like, okay, I have to keep
Absolutely.
doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to do when I first started was make sure I didn't, if I was going to be on social media and after maybe 6 months it was clear that people were going to follow me. I wanted to make sure that I didn't turn into one of those like most of the fitness influencer accounts or whatever you see and call them on Instagram or on even TikTok these days, where they have these insane really fast transformations and they instantly get sponsored by some really high end company which I couldn't afford whatever products they were selling, and then they maintain um some physique that I will never have, probably because they're 10 or 15 years younger than me, right? And also probably because they're doing some things off off camera that don't want to do. Um, and I wanted to make sure that I was keeping it authentic, both in terms of what I was eating, in terms of where I was getting it, in terms of what I did with my life, right? Like I'm an accountant day to day, right? And in terms of, what my routine is, even if people think it's, suboptimal that I get up at 4 a.m., right? I do, right? And that's worked for me. So I wanted to make sure I was really showing, what I was doing and right what I wasn't doing. Right, people talk all the time about how I'm in Planet Fitness. Right, they don't have fancy equipment. The dumbbells don't go, well, they stop at 75 or whatever. And there's all sorts of things they don't have. Right, but it's a mile away and it's $10. So like that's right. That's why I'm there. It's convenient and it's 24 hours. Right, and so I get people asking me all the time. And the other thing is, right, I'm not really trying to be a bodybuilder, right? I'm trying to get like to a healthy weight. If I can get to 199 or at my height, like that's not going to show like abs or anything, right? It's just going to be, I'm just going to look like a normal dude at that weight and my height. And and same with the food, right? People will talk about how, you know, I eat a lot of meat, right? A lot of meat. It's not grass fed, it's not grass finished, it's not organic. Sometimes it is, right? But sometimes it's not, right? Like I'm trying to eat more of that stuff, but I'd still say it's at least 50-50 the organic, grass fed, grass finished, and just what Walmart had that day and hopefully what they had on sale. And I think one of the issues, not I think, but one of the issues I definitely had in the beginning was there were so many people online and when I was doing research who looked so good and presented themselves looking so good on social media, who were doing either wildly different things from each other or things that I thought would be insanely expensive and basically impossible to maintain. It was, you know, initially a little bit difficult for me to determine, you know, like what I should do or what path I should go down because people were in these echo chambers, in these little, I don't even exactly know what you call them, where they're doing things that I think look kind of wild, but it's working, or at least they're showing it's working. But I don't know if I could afford it, and I don't know if I could work it into my lifestyle, you know, just being like a regular guy, right? Who has like social events and corporate events and religious events. I have to be like do things. Um, and so it was really, I didn't want my presence if I ended up having one online to become that. And more importantly, for my actual mental health and my physical health and my financial health, I wasn't sure that long term that would get me the results it wanted. Although certainly, right, uh, doing fasting combined with like a really strict, you know, I don't know, carnivore OMAD would drop crazy weight, right? Especially if you threw in an hour or two of exercising a day. It's just how long could I do OMAD plus fasting plus strict carnivore plus 2 hours of exercise a day, right? I don't think I could do it forever.
Right. So when I was doing OMAD, so I've done, and started like when I started doing the ketogenic lifestyle, like things were a lot different. They looked at protein differently. They were worried about consuming too much protein, the gluconeogenesis factor. They looked at it as it was a consumption driven mechanism versus what we're looking at it today as more of a demand driven mechanism.
Yeah.
But for me, I've always leaned in to what is easy for me and what's
Yes.
sustainable for me. And I mean, it's right in the name, keto simple, right?
Exactly.
So OMAD for me was born out of I didn't want to meal prep.
Yep.
I didn't want to spend money for lunch and deal with, like going to McDonald's because you can meet McDonald's if you just get the patties, it's beef, it's salt, it's pepper,
Yeah.
it's fine. Like it's Wendy's, it's beef, it's salt, it's fine. Those are fine. I mean, it's probably about the same quality as you're getting out of Walmart, which
Yep.
is fine. It's perfectly acceptable. But to me, like the money spent wasn't necessarily worth it. And I could say, okay, I'm working. I get up in the morning, I make my coffee, I head to work. I'm going to basically, unless you consider coffee with some cream or whatever in it, that's a breaking of a fast, but it's basically considered a meal. I'm not
Yeah.
going to eat again until I get home from work,
Hmm.
make dinner for the family. That way I'm saving time, money, energy, and all of that. So OMAD fit my lifestyle and my fit my laziness, if you will. So I was
Yeah.
able to find success built around me. And I think that's one of the things that all the influencers don't shed light on. And there's been some influencers as of late that I've brought up because I try to keep everything very positive, and even
Yeah.
no matter how negative they may be, I still try to come at it with a positive look at things. But a lot of them are saying, if you want to find results, you have to do it just like me. But I'm
Yeah.
not you. I am me. So what works for me, OMAD worked for me, but I totally understand why you would look at it completely different.
Yeah, yeah, and I have landed on basically 2 MAD twice a day, more or less. So, not that far from an OMAD. I just think we stack all these different things to do on top of each other and all these different acronyms and all these different diets. And at some point, you start to lose people because one part of it they can't do and they think they have to do all of it. Whereas in reality, right, if I do have breakfast, I'm mostly eating eggs with hot sauce or with cheese, with water. If I'm eating a lunch, it's mostly chicken with some sort of vegetable. And I'm eating dinner, it's always a red meat, sometimes with some sort of vegetable, sometimes it's not. And I try to drink my calories. Is that strict carnivore? No. Is it strict OMAD? No. Is it substantially cleaner and better? And if it's mostly home cooked, more affordable than what I was doing? And has it cut out pretty much all sugar and most, 80% probably of my carbs? Yes. And so that to me is sustainable. At least it has been for, about 20 months. Now, someone else might look at that and think that's crazy, right? Because of how much meat I'm eating or because of how many carbs I've cut out, right? But to me, at some point, the goal to me was to try to cut out the bad things I was doing, but leave enough of the good things that I would feel full at basically every meal, and I would still be eating what I like to eat, which for me is meat, and to not end up doing something that I considered too much of a fad that wouldn't allow me to function, when I have a family event or a social event. But usually there's a chicken dish served or there's a red meat dish served, and it won't be as clean and quite as low carb as what I would make myself, but it will be enough that it's, good enough for a day where I'm a little bit higher, in terms of calories or in terms of carbs or even in terms of sugar. And then the other thing was I wanted it to be easy, right? I wanted it to be, it didn't want to have to think about it too much because I think part of the reason I think I got so large was that there's so many easy calories out there. And back, pre 2020, especially, not particularly expensive. And so I had all these options for easy fast food, easy junk food, right? That every store, from gas stations to toy store, will sell you also has snacks and candy and right things that you wouldn't necessarily have expected there. And because of the caloric density of these days in modern processed foods, I was basically eating a meal every time I gassed up, but I wasn't thinking about it as a meal because it was 2 bars and a drink or whatever. But 2 bars and a drink was like 500 calories, 600 calories, right? And and a lot of sugar and a lot of carbs and a lot of whatever else is in there. And I didn't think if I made my new lifestyle too hard, I would be able to stick to it in terms of the diet. So it had to be at the same level of ease as the old diet was, but without all that food. And for me, what that meant was like keeping a few clean ingredients fully stocked in the house, um, that were quick to prepare or easy to prepare, right? Eggs are very fast. Chicken, you can do it a million ways, but every single one of them is basically easy. And steaks and red meat, those are my favorite. So I get a little more elaborate with those. I have a little more fun with those. Usually I'm making those in the evening, so I might have a little more time. I'm not trying to eat them at work, or I'm not trying to eat them before work and I'm rushing to work. And that's my favorite. So that might be a little bit of an exception there. But even in terms of my working out, right? I knew if I was trying to working out all over the place. At the time, I was a full time grad student and I was working full time. And it was just like, I'm not going to be able to do this at lunch. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it after work because I had nighttime classes. So I think I need to find the same time every day that I can set the same alarm. And even if other people think it's ridiculous, it simplifies the routine, right? However many times I'm going to go to the gym a week, even if it's just walking on the treadmill, I'm not doing anything extreme. It needs to be routine, routine, routine. So it becomes simple, it becomes easy, it becomes a habit. And that's like what I ended on. And you know it's one of those things where looking back, or explaining it even, it doesn't sound hard, it doesn't seem difficult, but the explanation is easy. The execution is substantially less easy, right? Because I still get those cravings sometimes because I still don't want to wake up and go do it, or because sometimes I get home from work and I see that steak I have dry brining or the brisket I have going, and I don't want to finish it, right? I don't want to put in the work. I'm tired. I don't want to go from the dry brining stage to the actually eating it stage. So for me, building it into routines for and I guess discipline will be the word for when the motivation fades, because the motivation does fade, and at the end of January I know a lot of people's motivation is fading, right? um, Working it into routines that became discipline, that became habits, was critical for me, and what was something I had never really gotten to that stage before, because before I hadn't um, I had never built something that was as simple and as repetitive. So it's been this weird key to my success, and I'm sure some people see it, is I basically do the same thing like every day, right? Even down to what I wear, like the shirts and shorts I'm at the gym, like I got some sort of like six pack or whatever, and I just change color and they're basically the same. And I like, as long as as many of those pain points and decision points as I can eliminate, so that I can focus on the ones I can't eliminate, has just been critical for my success.
And that kind of leads us into Danny has some question. It's kind of a two-parter, and Matt has one that's kind of fits in with this as well.
Sure.
So Danny's saying, I need help advice. I've done it again. I stopped in at Home Depot, grabbed the Reese's cups, the Kit Kats. Also, not getting into the workout routine. I keep telling myself I'm going to do better. And he has, uh, I tell myself I'm going to get up and work out, but I don't tell my, let's see, but I don't tell myself you're not going to get the candy next time. I know I'm eating it. Done 2 years in a row. Great. Now I'm having trouble. And that also kind of comes into Matt's question here a little bit as well, because they're all just kind of going to fit together here. So it says, maybe I missed it, but how did you find the motivation to do that first workout, head down the road to a better physical health?
Yeah. So the first workout was both the hardest and not the hardest. It was the hardest in terms of I had to walk into the gym alone at over 400 pounds, having never gone into a gym before, and being too big to fit on some of the machines and not knowing how to do most of the machines regardless. And that was really tough. Lots of anxiety, very nervous, and not just the first day, right? The first week or two, basically the same process. The flip side of that, what made it possible, was that's when my motivation was the highest. I was just coming off of not fitting in an airplane seat, not being able to get my weight at home, struggling to tie my shoes, getting winded going up the stairs. And so both those were the hardest workouts, because I had to walk in, alone, that big, not knowing anything, not because I worked out hard, because I didn't work out hard at all. I just walked on the treadmill. Um, but also, they were some of the more easy ones for me, because at that first month was when my motivation was crazy high. I couldn't. People ask, how do they get started, right? How do they do it initially? For me, I had to have that Hail Mary, come to Jesus, wake up call, whatever we want to call it, getting that error message on the scale in the same week, really, as needing a seatbelt extender, where I was really motivated. Something had to change. It all had to change now. It had to change at once. I didn't feel like I had an option, honestly. And so it was really hard walking into that gym, alone. But I just reminded myself of like what was waiting for me if I didn't do it, right? Which was, which was probably more weight gain, right? More mental health spiraling, um, and more loss of control of my life, very young. And that was the other thing I kept in mind. I had just turned 30. I had just bought a house. I wanted to keep growing in my career. I wanted to, keep growing in my career. I wanted to get married one day. I wasn't married at the time. I was single at the time. I wanted to have kids one day, right? I wanted to be around to see my kids. I wanted to make my parents proud. So I have this sort of list I keep in my mind of my long-term goals that I'm thinking about. And they were really critical early on with those first couple of workouts. And they're still important these days when I don't want to get up that early at 4 or 5 in the morning. That's uh, really important to me. And when I have days when I stop and I get something that I shouldn't, and I eat something that I shouldn't, one of the things I try to do is not beat myself up. Firstly, because if I have a single candy bar, if I have a single meal that I shouldn't have, while it is going to be like unfortunate, right, and I won't feel great about it, it's not going to. Uh, ruin the whole day or ruin the whole week or ruin the whole month in terms of my diet and my weight loss, right? It's a couple hundred calories. It's, more sugar than I would want. But what I try to make sure is it doesn't become a pattern for me. So why did I feel like I needed that snack? Why did I buy that thing as I'm checking out at some store, right? That I probably shouldn't have. Was I really hungry? Was I bored? Was it the marketing got me? It was a new thing? I wanted to try it. Was I stressed? Was I anxious? And then what can I do to address that? So like I keep beef jerky in my car, like not for like long term, but like and I'll put like a new bag in there every weekish, and I will snack on it as I'm driving around doing errands or whatever, because I know that I'm a grazer and that if I don't do that, I will probably grab myself a snack as I check out of the store. And so that was one of the things I came to terms with. And the other thing was that I'm a nighttime snacker, right? And I really in the 20 months I've had, I haven't been able to fully get away from that 8 to 10 p.m. nighttime snack, with the exception that if I'm good and I go to bed early, that really helps me. But I've tried. The problem is I'm not good at doing that. But when I do it, and that works, I'm asleep. I can't eat then. I try to do things that you know make it less likely that I'll snack. And if I do snack, it's something that's low carb. It's something that's keto. It's something I had. If I have a boiled egg and some beef jerky at 8:30 p.m., I don't feel great about it, but I don't beat myself up. Right? That's on my diet. It's probably not a huge number of calories for me. And to be honest, those eggs are pretty healthy anyway. And then the other thing is, now I try to brush my teeth right after dinner. I try to go to bed early. I try to drink a glass of water before I have a snack. There are some things that I've learned over the last year or two that hope that make it a little bit less likely. But the truth is, and I think again, one of these things we don't see and we don't talk about online that sort of frustrates me is I'm not perfect, right? Sometimes I do, right? And it's not the end of the world when I grab that snack. It's not a good thing, but we have this drive for perfection because we see it online from all these people, and because we want to be perfect, right? And it's like really in reality, I'm maybe 75%, 80% good, and then 20 to 25% not so good. And that balance to me has led to sort of slow and steady weight loss, and has led to me feeling okay, mentally, and spending a lot less money, and making a lot healthier and cleaner choices. But really, I don't think the push to never do anything off script is particularly healthy, and it does kind of annoy me how often I do see that online, because I don't think those people are really doing that. You know what I mean? With all the different changes in my diet I've made, with all the mechanisms I put in place to make sure that I'm grabbing for beef jerky instead of a Snicker bar, right? I still do occasionally snack. I still do find that some carbs creep into my diet at usually at meals that I'm not cooking for myself, things that I'm preparing. Or I made a meatball sauce last night, and it was a no sugar added, low carb marinara sauce. But there was still like some in there, right? And it was just that like I didn't feel that I could just have meat. I felt that I wanted some more flavor, I wanted some more color, I wanted different texture, and I'm not going to beat myself up over 4 or 5 grams of sugar that totaled maybe 30 for the day, but they were there, right? And I see online people trying to go really strict and really hard, and if that works for you, I totally support it. But for me, it's more about seeing the forest through the trees and recognizing that if I'm replacing um, uh, you know, a Big Mac Happy Meal with a 32-ounce, non-diet soda with chicken and broccoli and a diet soda, that's a substantially better choice, even though that diet soda is still probably not great, right? And depending on that vegetable, it might have some carbs. And honestly, I usually eat way more than what the serving size says, even if I'm eating chicken or whatever, right? Because those serving sizes are small. I'm not full, and I usually eat roughly to what I'm full. So if I can get 80% of my choices to be 80% better than they were, that gets me, at least so far, to where I'm slow and steady losing weight. I feel good mentally. I think I look better than I did. And I can be a functional member of society and not beat myself up if I make a small mistake. Now, if the mistake becomes a habit and every time I go to the gas station, I'm eating 3 candy bars and like pounding a Red Bull, maybe, that's more of a problem. The issue for me is if it's the exception, right? I'm going to have lunch with my mother-in-law today. She is born and raised in Georgia. She does not understand what low carb is. She is not interested, and she is going to serve me just a plate of carbs, right? And I'm going to do my best to mostly eat the meat she serves, mostly eat the vegetables she serves, but I'm going to have a little of the other stuff to be polite. And it might result in me having 40 or 50 carbs today, maybe even 60, but it will still be several hundred less than I had before. I won't have any alcohol. It will be a homemade meal, and it will be all the carbs I have today. I'm just going to have eggs for breakfast, and I probably won't be hungry after she serves me that meal. And then I'm not seeing her again for a few weeks, and so tomorrow I'll be perfectly low carb. To me, it's about doing everything you can to be as good as you can, and then accepting that for me personally, that's probably going to get me to like 80%, and that 20% I can't control is okay. I don't I
That
it's not
yeah.
I don't like moderation, that argument. For me, I don't do moderation, right? I do as little as I can, and then when I can't control it, I have a little bit. And I don't know what exactly we call that, but that's sort of where I've landed. Apologies for rambling there.
Oh, no worries. I mean, for me, like that's like the mantra of 2024 for me is consistency over perfection.
Yes.
Because anytime I see some kind of influencer or YouTube personality, and I know there's a lot of people who are, no matter how well meaning they are, if they are telling me, I haven't had a cheat day in 18 years, I'm like, I don't believe you. And I mean, and it's probably, we have selective memories, we have all these things. And I'm, my wife and I, we do a live stream every Tuesday. I do this on Saturdays with a guest, and then I have a coffee chat on Sunday mornings. And I'm very open, and I will, I I lay it all out because for me being as open and honest as I can is paramount because people are inevitably going to be looking to me for advice, looking at what I do. And if they see me and I look like I'm doing everything just right, they're going to be more likely to beat themselves up over any kind of what they would be a perceived infraction in their daily diet, whether it's grabbing the candy bar from the gas station or, having the carbs their mom makes for them or whatever the case is. It's like we went out to eat last week and we had was cauliflower crust pizza, and we knew it wasn't going to be clean because there was, we ended up looking at the ingredients. There was rice flour in it and all that
That's one of the
stuff. But
tough things, man. So many people want
yeah,
to help me and they serve me. I call them like the alternative foods, and to me, they just never work, right? It's like when they're like,
right.
you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make bread, but it's keto. I'm just not gonna have bread. Like to me, like I understand, I see it out there. I see people make it homemade. I see people advertising products that look good, but to me, it's never as good. And it's always something. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's always something
Yeah,
like cauliflower. Where they're like, it's a replacement, and I flip it over, and I'm like, it's not anywhere near keto or low carb, right?
right.
Especially if I have more than one slice, which I want to, right?
And I see these ingredients, and I was talking about this on a live stream I was on last night. When I started, when my wife and I started keto, low carb in 2016, the market was completely different. We didn't
Yeah.
have all the products. We didn't have all of the things on the shelves. There were some Quest bars. There were some little things like that that are still around today. But there was like the Atkins stuff, but it wasn't very clean. Even then, I knew that wasn't really clean with the maltitol and stuff. But nowadays, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse with all the keto-fied
Both, right?
products that we see on the store shelves, because I think the blessing side of it is you're seeing the word keto everywhere.
Yes.
So that's kind of putting that in the zeitgeist where it's putting in people's vernacular. We're starting to understand that low carb, it's not as unhealthy as they're trying to sell it as.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I think where the curse side of it comes in is somebody will, without really asking any questions, pick up the low carb tortillas, a low carb bread, and they're making sandwiches and they're doing whatever they're eating, and they're utilizing those and having 3 or 4 or 5 of those a day. and they're wondering why keto isn't working for
Yeah,
them, or low
exactly.
carb isn't working for them, or they're not seeing, any kind of progress. And then they're just going, well, it doesn't work. So
Yeah.
I see it both ways, and it's a I think it's like, those products are sort of a necessary evil, I think, because
Agreed.
there's going to be people who utilize those as a lever. They're going to
Yep.
utilize those because if they can go to the keto bread, and then that means that they're not buying the Wonder Bread or whatever it is.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. I appreciate that I can go now and get bread that doesn't have sugar added, right? It was wild that there was sugar added to start with. I appreciate that it's not there anymore. However, like when I go into the baking section and I see like keto cake icing, I'm not like I don't know what they're doing to get that to have the keto label. I know it's not like regulated, so they're just like putting it on there. But like I still don't trust that cake icing to be particularly healthy, or if it is, it's probably not good because what makes cake icing good is sugar and sweetness. So I know they're using some sort of sweetener. Maybe it's a more natural one that I like. Maybe it's not one. Maybe it's one we'll
The
stop using
texture's
in
way
10
off, I'll
years.
just tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. But having said that, if I needed to have like a birthday cake or a birthday, right, I would probably use that. Right, I'm sure it's better. I had a tweet actually that got picked up by some of those low carb doctors where I said, people, tried keto and it failed, and here's the keto, and it was a shopping cart, and it was all full of like these
Mhm.
processed, packaged, frozen keto, low carb, keto friendly products, and but no meat and no vegetables, right, and no just like whole products that we already have that we didn't have to do any food engineering on, right? Like, I'm personally like I'm sort of settling on like allulose as like the sweetener. I like the sugar alternative. But having said that, I don't want to have much of it, right? Because that for me mentally will trigger cravings. And that I don't know. I'm not a scientist, what we're going to find out or not find out about it in the future. It's nice to have, but I also consider it very dangerous because I could make a lot of normal products swapping out it as a sugar alternative. And I think that even though on paper my sugar content wouldn't go up, and it might not even spike my glucose. I guess I'd have to monitor that, but I think my weight loss would slow because my portions would increase because I'd go back towards eating more standard American diet food, and because I'd give myself mental permission. Oh, it's not sugar, right? It's this other thing, and it's no calories, and it's even sweeter, right? And part of the success I've had is the the cutting out of things. And I know that like it's not super popular to say these days because we're trying to have everything we want and just find alternatives. But sometimes for me, like I have not had a good keto pancake. I see people make them, they look good on the internet. I've tried a few of them, and afterwards I think that wasn't that good. And I don't think it was keto. I don't think it was really keto. So really I just haven't had pancakes in 2 years. And it got cut out, right? And with my pancakes, what do I like? Powdered sugar, syrup, and like hash browns, right? It's just, to me, it's easier to cut things out than it is sometimes to go with all these alternatives. I find the alternatives that I use, again, sorry for rambling, it's in that 20%, right? The 80%, I try to do myself, cook myself. If I'm not cooking myself, right, do some a la carte thing at a restaurant where I'm keeping it very much to meat and vegetables. And then that 20% where I might be in a social setting, or sometimes people will ask, like, I know you're low carb, like, can I make this, that, the other thing? And if it has one of those cauliflower crusts or keto bread ingredients, I might say like, hey, like I don't know if that's the best for me, but it's perfectly fine, right? Like I'm not going to be the guy who dictates how the whole meal goes for all 10 people because I don't want to have a slice of keto bread, right? Right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
We've all had those awkward conversations. I remember my sister lives in Texas, and I'd flown in, and I was in the car with a friend of mine, and she was like, "I want to cook you dinner. Can you have spaghetti?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"No."
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's like everybody's so well-meaning, and I mean, it harkens back to like even when I was a kid, like we would go visit my great grandmother, and like as soon as we walked in the back door, there's cast iron hitting the stove. You know what I mean? Like she's
Yep.
cooking and all that stuff, and it's just everybody means well. Everybody wants to do something for you. They want to show you their love by cooking. They want, and they don't necessarily understand what keto is, or they
Yes.
don't care to understand what keto is or whatever. But, And like you said, like the 80%, the 90%, you're going to get yourself as close as you can, because sustainability, consistency is going to get us a lot farther than trying to be so strict that we just give up. Or we also want to get to the point where we're insufferable.
Yes.
So like, like my kids used to joke with us, like, because in the very beginning we were, it was new and we're like struggling. And so we were probably far more strict than we should have been. But I mean, that's where we were.
Yeah, yeah.
And so our boys that lived at home were de facto keto. They didn't like it,
Yeah.
but like if they were to go out with their friends or their dad or whatever, then they could have whatever they'd go out to dinner, have the whatever they ate with their friends or their dad or whatever, right? And but at home, we got rid of everything. We had a purge. We went through and got rid of everything out of the cabinets. We got rid of the margarine. We replaced it with butter and all that stuff. But they were like,
Yeah.
"What is this?" But we were like, "Okay, you can have." We get them some popcorn. We'd buy,
Mhm.
I mean, not keto, but these kids were
Yeah,
in
yeah.
rugby. They're running. They're doing all the stuff
Absolutely, yeah.
and carrots and stuff. But like they would joke, like they'd be like, "You know what? You wouldn't have got that flat tire if you were keto."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we
Mhm.
were kind of insufferable at the time,
Yeah.
and, like, you try to back off because you don't like it's like the thing that, and I'm not trying to poke fun, but everybody gets upset with vegans because that's kind of that insufferable mentality that we
That's
see that
exactly
they
why,
have,
yes. Yep.
and it's even starting to poke its head out in, like, the carnivore community,
I do see that,
and
yep.
the online influencers where they're like, if you eat pepper, you're not carnivore. It's like, but really? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like, and we
yeah.
see that. So just try not to be insufferable. And so, like, 80, 90, 95%, whatever sustainable for you. Like I said, sustainable consistency is going to win. It's like the tortoise and the hare, right?
Yeah. Absolutely, and when I'm in that 20% that's not, as low carb and clean as I would like, that doesn't mean a six-pack of beer and DoorDash, right? That's the time I might have the cauliflower crust. That's the time I might have the keto bread, right? I know it's not really, right? That's the time something like I might have more fruit, right? I love fruit as a snack, but, like, it just has a lot of sugar, right? And especially the fruit that I actually like. I don't wanna be one of those people who just never eats fruit. I also think it has some nutrients, but modern fruit is very sweet and it tastes very good. So I would put it in that 20%, right? If I'm out somewhere at a restaurant, someone's serving me food, the fruit option and the keto bread might be two of the foods that are healthier on that table, even though at my home table, not so much. But right, being able to both have that 20% and function in society, it is important to me as I get into my 30s and as I get married and as I think towards the future, where around here in the deep south, like, there's going to be a lot of carbs and a lot of sugar for the rest of my life, right? Much as I work on changing that, it's getting more prevalent, not the other way around.
I don't know what it's going to look like in the future. I know that we're kind of on a turning point now where more and more people are starting to understand
Yeah.
just how much sugar we have in our society. Like, I'm putting together some short form content where, like, if you look at, like, how many people do you know who will have at least one 20-ounce Mountain Dew a day?
Yeah, a lot.
Like full sugar,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yep.
77 grams of sugar in a Mountain Dew. And, like, I think it's 100 milligrams of caffeine. And if you had one every day for 365 days, it's like 61 pounds
That's
of
wild.
sugar in a
Yeah, it's
year. It's
wild.
crazy. People don't look at it. And then, like, the, like, and thankfully, I think it's starting to turn around. There's going
You
to
are
be a
seeing a
lot of
lot.
people
Yeah.
with their head in the sand. But I'm kind of curious to how is that going to look going forward, because our, like, basically, if you were to completely keto-fy, or like if Whole Foods was truly Whole Foods,
Yeah.
what would it look like? What would Walmart look like if we removed everything that was processed? It would basically, like, at least for a time, completely shatter our economy,
Oh, yeah.
unfortunately. So that's
100%.
the
Yeah.
thing, is like, how do we move forward with that? I'm not smart enough to figure that out, but it's just something that I have thought about. I'm like, if Think about how big the grocery side of Walmart is. And if we removed everything out of there that we didn't need, we'd be back at the grocery stores from like the 1800s.
Yeah, you can have the local store, yeah, with a few different
Yeah.
shelves. Yeah. No, there's a lot more sugar-free items now that I see, and I do see a lot of people discussing sugar in real life, not internet people, which is very positive. And I definitely feel it seems to be slowly breaking through to the mainstream. And there's a lot of sugar, processed ingredients, things of that nature. And I think that's a positive. I think going along with that, though, if it becomes the solution to that are things like Ozempic and medications, I wonder how much that might temper some of the health conscious stuff because people feel like they can simply go to a medication. So I think it's going to be very interesting because I see the two converging, and I don't know if they find like a happy symbiotic relationship where it's like people use it when they need it and then they're also switching their diet over to whole foods and like that's the lifestyle change they make, or if they're two trains that hit each other. Because while there is a crazy amount of unhealthy stuff in Walmart, in the grocery store, easily over 50%, there's also more organic stuff, more whole foods than I would have imagined from a Walmart. And I think probably that there than even were, 5, 10 years ago. And there's a lot of foods that are still processed and still packaged to some degree, but like they didn't add any sugar to the bread, or they're not, some of the things that I think used to have added sugar, they're either pulling back on or making an option that will then say no sugar added. And I do appreciate that. It's nowhere near keto, it's nowhere near low carb, but at least you didn't pour more sugar into this product, for what? For addiction purposes, right? Essentially.
Yeah, somebody on Twitter posted something the other day. It was like a picture of I can't remember who it was, but I retweeted it. But it was, I bought strawberry preserves that didn't have added sugar, and they charged me more for what they didn't put in.
I saw that. Yes, I saw that guy. I think it was that Thomas guy. Yes, that's wild. Isn't that
Yeah,
wild? It's
Thomas
just yeah.
DeLauer. Yeah, Thomas
Yes.
DeLauer. Yeah. I'm
Yes,
hoping to
it's
have
wild.
him on one of these days. But
Yeah.
yeah, but also the same, like he was one of the people that I was saying that he came out and said like he had a video where he and Paul Saldino were talking
Yeah.
about how they've added carbs back into their diet.
I
And
see
I was
Paul eating
like,
honey and stuff. Yeah.
well, my thing is like what they didn't, at least what I didn't notice them touching on is like those two are like peak physical specimens, right? They're not embarrassed to take their shirts off. They're not like
Yes.
they have muscles, they're physically fit. If they add the 200 grams of sugar into their diet a day, regardless if it's honey or whatever, I was looking at that. I was like, it's kind of, from my perspective and kind of from our community's perspective, a little disingenuous. I know they're being realistic and they're telling us what they're doing, but it was like a little disingenuous just because so many of us struggle and they go, oh, they look like that and they're
Yeah.
having 200 grams of sugar. Can I do that? Because I'm really missing sugar right now.
Yeah.
Can I do that and look like them? And I'm just like, no. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, I can't say definitively no, but I'm gonna say probably not because I'm not a doctor or healthcare professional or anything
Yeah.
like that. But I'm like, because I watched that because I really like Thomas DeLauer. He's very
Yeah.
scientific and deep dives into a lot
Yeah.
of
He's
things.
great. Yeah.
And but I looked at that and I'm like, there should have been just a little bit of, hey, we go to the gym for 4 hours a day,
But yeah,
you know?
Saladino, he's having some honey and then he goes surfs for 2 hours, right? Yeah, but I
Yeah.
don't do that part.
No, I don't live anywhere near the ocean,
Yeah.
so, and I mean, like, that's just kinda where I think there's, like, a somewhat of a disconnect sometimes where, it's working for them, and I would say that that's probably in line with our ancestors to some degree. If they were gonna have sugar, it's gonna be from what berries they found or
Yeah,
honey
some natural
or
sources,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, natural sources, even though our liver can't necessarily detect the difference
Yeah,
because that,
exactly.
well, it's a natural sugar. Well, your liver doesn't care,
Yeah.
or your pancreas doesn't care, or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that I see that, and I'm like, I'm not trying to be negative and to be like they're stupid, but I'm at the same time, I'm like, you have to kind of watch that kind of content with an open mind, just like you watch any of the vegan health documentaries, like whatever they have on Netflix, like the What the Healths and all these things trying to say that, if you eat an egg, it's the same as smoking a cigarette and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
You have to kind of watch, even with what I say, because I'm going and telling people my experiences. I've made a million mistakes. I'm going to make
Yeah,
a million more. I can be a dum dum. And, I'm talking to people all the time. I'm going to get things wrong. So,
absolutely. And I think
and
there's a
let's see.
big difference. I do think there's a big difference between uh, the honey and fruit that Saladino eats before intensive exercise and the 2000 calorie 3000 calorie meal that I was getting from fast food that has the same grams of sugar before I go back and do an afternoon of accounting. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
he's really put together, right? I understand the sugar content might be the same, but all the stuff around it, right? If he's eating from just basically a fruit source that doesn't contain any chemicals or additives or any other very calorie dense things or any other processing or junk food, and then he's combining it with intensive exercise right after, that sounds like a formula that might actually work for him. I don't do those things, right? My sugar unfortunately mostly came from processed food, from junk food, from fast food. And was combined with me sitting on the couch. And so that's a very different thing, I think, even though, again, I think the numbers might have been similar, to how much the sugar he's getting just in terms of grams. So it's one of those things where you look at lifestyles, just like you said, of people online, and it, the first thing I ask is, do I see this? This is from food to politics to everything I see online. It's like or culture war stuff, right? All that nonsense you see on Twitter all the time, which I don't engage in. But the first thing I always ask myself is, do I see this in real life? Do I see this in my life, in the little town I live in? And I don't see hours of surfing, and I don't see people eating organic mangoes, right? And that's not where they're getting their sugar, right? And so then I don't see it in my house either, then it's probably something I can't do, right? Right? Like, like all the science and all the studies, and it's clearly working for them, and they're a doctor and I'm not, but I don't see it in my real life.
Right. And Evelyn has a question. She says she's sorry if you already missed it. We haven't actually covered this yet, so this is nice. Do you have any places where she can find you outside of Twitter?
Yes. So I did actually start on Instagram, and I'm on their version of Twitter as well. I know there's some people who made the jump. So I'm on Instagram and Threads. Twitter is my big one. That's where I'm mostly active. And I do have a YouTube channel. I've sort of switched over to just making YouTube shorts because they can be posted to other places. But my goal for this year is to do more videos. So yeah, I'm on Instagram and Threads. I'm also on Facebook and YouTube as well.
All right. Yeah, I put in the pinned comment I put underneath there that I put your link to YouTube.
Thank you.
Um, yeah. Um, so we've been going for about an hour and 10 minutes. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about specifically?
First, I just wanted to quickly apologize. I'm in a little distracted. We have a big storm down here. My power's been flickering and my internet's been up and down. This is not normally the camera I have or the setup I have. So if I seem a little distracted, my apologies. A crazy amount of weather and rain down here, but that is unrelated. The thing I just like to touch on whenever given the opportunity is that one of the hardest things for me was to start. Was those first couple of steps. Again, it was the most motivated time, but I didn't know what to do and I had never done any of it. And there is so much infotainment out there, and there is so much paralysis through analysis. And there's so many people who are ripped and healthy and sexy and doing polar opposite things of each other that it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Right. And then I'll jump into the keto space, the vegan space, the carnivore space, and they'll be like, well, like, you just eat steaks and that's literally all, and you just can't do anything else, and like that's it. And then I'll jump over here and this guy's making himself a cauliflower pizza and he's ripped, right? So one of the big things that I did was I tuned a lot of it out. The signal to noise ratio on the internet is just wild. And I experimented, on myself, not with anything crazy, but just took the first step, walked into the gym, took the first step down the low carb path. Not, I wasn't even low carb. Calling it low carb is, probably gonna get me in trouble. Just cutting out all of that stuff. I didn't know what I should eat, but I knew what wasn't working. Right. So just by cutting out what clearly wasn't working, I eliminated a huge amount of carbs, a huge amount of sugar, a huge amount of processed food, and to be honest, I even saved money. I know that topic comes up, but like for me, my grocery budget has decreased from when I was binge eating DoorDash, every single day. And so, taking those first steps and recognizing that no man is an island, and that men have feelings, and men have emotional needs, and men have mental health needs was a huge thing that I wish I had done earlier, and very specifically on the gym, because I get this a lot. The people in the gym are way nicer and way more friendly and want to help way more than I would have imagined early on, especially the big guys who are like deadlifting more than I weigh. And I think they're judging me, right? Because I can't even fit in these clothes or walk on the treadmill. They're your biggest cheerleaders. They want to see you back tomorrow, and they're really excited when they do. And to be honest, those guys who are the huge, mass monster muscle guys are some of my biggest fans at the gym. Even though I don't want to look like that, I'm not. They're not doing. I don't know what they're doing, but probably things I don't want to do. Right. But it's been hugely reassuring, both online and in person, to reach out, to find people to support you, to ask questions, and to recognize that while there are trolls and there are, negativity on the internet, there's a huge number of people who do want you to succeed and want you to see you there the next day, and want you to find what works for you, both in terms of a diet and an exercise, and that path has to be your own. And the way to start is just to start. And it's unfortunate because sometimes people want like a specific meal plan from me and a specific exercise plan, and I'm happy to give that, right, just to, or to tell them what I'm doing. But really, it's to start with something and to tweak it as you go. And that, I mean, I'm not an expert either, but 20 months in, that's that's what I've done.
Yeah, that's one of the things that um, I've noticed, that there's a segment of people out there that just need that hand holding. So there's an event that happens every year right now. It's called Keto Palooza, and I was involved with a live stream with the creator and the person who organizes and runs the event. And she said that she sent out surveys, and one of the things that she got back from the surveys was that, because there's like Friday night where it's like we're all hanging out and they're playing games and getting to know each other, and then Saturday is all like speakers, and then Sunday is like we have a breakfast and we talk, and one of the things was people said they didn't feel that the speakers provided them like specific things
Yeah.
to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I understand that, and that's like one of the things, like, people kinda need that push. I mean, like, if somebody asked me, like, "What should I do?" And I was like, "Go Whole Foods, meat, eggs, veggies like broccoli and Brussels sprouts, and don't allow yourself don't worry in the very beginning, like, don't worry about calories, don't worry about macros, just eat enough meat, eggs, and vegetables to where you're not hungry. And if you start to feel like hungry, maybe have some bacon and maybe a boiled egg or whatever. Because if you are so full you can't eat a boiled egg, you're gonna be less likely to reach for the Snickers. Because I know when I was that, like, I was always so hungry.
All
It
the
didn't
time.
matter how much I would eat. I was always hungry, and that's like where I've been able, like, that's where, like, the satiety thing that I've brought up a couple of times
Yeah.
here is
Mhm.
finding satiety is like losing I'm lost over 100 pounds, but losing that weight of hunger and
Yes.
just being able to, okay, I can, I've done, everything from 24-hour fasts all the way to 21 days.
Wow.
And I could have done that before. I would have probably died, but I mean,
Yeah.
figuratively, but being able, 21 days was difficult. I won't tell any other way than that. 7 days is relatively simple for me now. I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend it for everybody, but I try to do one once a year, twice a year. It helps. But just finding the satiety is so huge, and I think that's one thing that I think that people overlook. And that's the way when everyone tries to tell me, I was like, I don't know any specific meal plans, because literally I could eat burger patties and fried eggs every day or
Yeah.
whatever. That would be fine
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
so that's a meal plan. But most
There
people
you go.
need,
Yeah.
like, on
Yeah.
Tuesdays, on Wednesdays we wear pink. You know what I mean? They need
Exactly.
that,
Yes. Yeah.
So let's see. She's asking, is it It's Dave. It's Dave Keto. Was that what you were on Instagram, Dave Keto,
No,
or
it's Dave E. Danna or David E. Danna on every platform, just my name. Just
okay?
I tried to keep it just as close as my name as possible.
Yeah.
On Instagram, it's david.e.danna.
Okay. Perfect. And if you want to, Cindy, put that in the chat so people can click that for me. Thank you. Um. So yeah, I mean, I've really appreciated you being here. Did you have anything else you want to talk about? Anything you've got coming up that you want to talk about? I know you just got married. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I don't have anything coming up, to be honest. January and February, as an accountant, my busy months. So trying to get through the workload and maintain and lose weight is my focus for about another 3 to 4 weeks. And then I'm going to dive back into more events and whatnot. But no, a pleasure being here. And thank you for having me.
I really do appreciate it. It means a lot to me, and I'm glad that you got a chance to talk about all these things. Okay, let's see. She was clarifying here. She says, "No, just saying it's n equals one. Your keto journey is your own."
That's right.
Okay, okay.
That's exactly right.
It's
Yeah.
Dave's keto. Okay, all right.
I get it
I was
now. Yes.
all right.
Yes, that is true. 100%. Yes.
But again, thank you to all my supporters, all my members that are in the chat, everybody coming in with questions. You're amazing. I appreciate each and every one of you. Dave, again, thanks so much. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with my coffee. And have a great rest of your weekend, everybody.